Hey everyone, and welcome to a spooky Halloween edition of Royalty Now Studios, where I reimagine famous figures from the past as modern-day people. I share some history about each of my subjects, what they may have looked like, and then share my recreations, which I think make the figures feel more fun and relatable to us today. Today we're talking about Vlad III, also known as Vlad the Impaler, the loose inspiration for the character of Dracula. We'll talk about his life, his evil deeds, and then I will reveal my modern-day recreation with you all at the end. I have to admit this one made my skin crawl a little bit. First things first, if you like the video, make sure to like and subscribe if you're interested in more content that brings history to life. Also follow me on Instagram at royalty_now_ to check out the still images and reels of new subjects that I post every 2 weeks. Quick warning that this video includes some graphic descriptions of violence. This guy was a real piece of work. Research sources are included in the description. Obviously, if you'd like to skip to the end just to get the modern day recreation, you're welcome to do so. It's bookmarked. But for those of you who are interested in the history behind Vlad Dracula and some of the choices that I've made and how to depict him, listen ahead. Let's get started. To understand Vlad's life, you have to understand the military and political pressure of the time and region where he lived. Vlad lived in a region called Wallachia, a section of what is now Romania. There's a myth that Vlad the Impaler grew up in Bran Castle, commonly associated with Dracula, but that's actually farther north than he probably ever lived, and it's likely that he never set foot there. So he really lived in the southern part of modern-day Romania. And the Wallachian area was sandwiched between Christian Hungary and the formidable Muslim Ottoman Empire, which was a long-standing rival of both. So the Wallachians faced pressure from all sides. Now, this is a dark and twisting story, and it includes rivals becoming allies and friends becoming enemies, events that wouldn't seem out of place in even a Game of Thrones novel. So Vlad was the second son of Vlad II Dracul. And just for clarity, there's going to be two Vlads in this story. We've got older Vlad, Vlad II, and we've got younger Vlad, Vlad the Impaler, who is Vlad III. The moniker Dracul was given to Vlad II for his membership in the Order of the Dragon, which was a militant fraternity founded by the Holy Roman Emperor Sigismund. The Order of the Dragon was created to try to halt the advance of the Ottomans in Europe, who was kind of breathing down their neck at this time. Despite his former allegiance with the Holy Roman Emperor, Vlad's father was toppled from power in 1442 by factions allied with Hungary, which was their neighbor to the northwest, including members of his own nobility called the Boyar. So Vlad II turns to their former enemy, the Ottomans, for support after the invasion from Hungary. The Ottomans declared that he would need to pay a tribute for their support. In a stunning twist, Vlad II goes to the Ottomans for a diplomatic meeting in 1442 to talk through the details of their new alliance. Sultan Murad actually captured his two sons at this meeting, Vlad and his brother Radu, and held them as collateral to ensure good faith between the former enemies, only letting Vlad II go as a condition that his sons stayed with the Ottomans. We don't know too much about the treatment of the boys in captivity. Archaeologists believe they have found tunnels and dungeons in Turkey's Tokat Castle, where the boys may have been held. However, their treatment doesn't really sound all that bad. They were still the sons of a diplomatic ally after all. So the young Vlad and his brother were tutored in science, philosophy, the arts, and military warfare during this time. Despite the decent treatment, some scholars believe that this is where the young Vlad began to turn into the vicious man we know today. His hatred for the Ottomans ran deep after this imprisonment, and perhaps this is where the seeds of cruelty were planted. During his 5th year of captivity, Vlad III learns that his father and older brother have been brutally murdered, dispatched in a swamp, and tortured by their own nobility, the Boyar. With the support of the Ottomans, Vlad marches back to Wallachia to reclaim his father's seat and is initially successful. However, he is deposed after only a few months. Things get a bit foggy between 1448 and 1456. Vlad is thought to be living in exile during this time. But one thing is for certain, Vlad III has switched sides, again, throwing his support behind King Ladislaus V of Hungary. He halts his tribute payments to the Ottomans, enraging them and cementing his opposition. This is where the legend of Vlad the Impaler is born. Vlad has grown tired of the constant infighting of his own Wallachian nobility, the Boyar. He needs to centralize power, so legend has it that Vlad invited hundreds of his Boyar to a banquet, knowing they would oppose him, and ordered his guards to stab each one and impale them on a long spike. According to author Elizabeth Miller, it just so happens that the advent of the printing press in Europe at this time may have captured some of the now ruling Vlad's growingly gruesome deeds. These stories that circulated from Vlad's court were captured in pamphlets and disseminated throughout the land. Miller thinks that most of these pamphlets are actually historically accurate, although some, of course, may be exaggerations. From here, Vlad rules Wallachia uninterrupted until 1462, and it's during this time his tactics become more sadistic. His credits include impaling dozens of Saxon merchants and nailing turbans to a few Ottoman envoys' heads. However, this is also when he's credited with some good deeds for his people, like controlling crime and building new villages for those in need. Vlad is still a folk hero in modern-day Romania, praised for always doing what he needed to do to keep his people safe. But he was famously creative against his enemies and tough on criminals. Although Vlad's favorite method of punishment seemed to be impalement, he was also fond of boiling or skinning victims alive. He would cut off body parts, torture, disembowel, and behead. In the most famous incident, Mehmed the Conqueror, the Ottoman ruler now invading Wallachia, finds the Wallachian capital city suspiciously quiet. For 3 miles, his troops marched uninterrupted through the city, only to find 20,000 Ottoman bodies scattered throughout, impaled on spikes. These were prisoners that Vlad had taken over time. Mehmed the Conqueror was so shaken that he marched his entire army back to Turkey. Vlad was eventually forced into exile again, where he actually ended up getting married and having 2 children. He did rule a 3rd time, but it was very short-lived. Vlad was eventually killed and beheaded when him and a small group of his soldiers were ambushed when fighting the Ottomans. It was said that his head was delivered to Mehmed in Constantinople as a trophy of their victory. And the location of Vlad's tomb is unknown, adding more and more layers to the spooky legend, which may have been some of the inspiration for the undead Dracula. According to Live Science, historians believe that Vlad III killed an estimated 80,000 people during his time as ruler. So let's talk about what he may have looked like. Now, it's important to note that we don't have any surviving images of Vlad III from his lifetime. The most famous image we have of him was actually painted long after his death by an unknown artist, so we really have little to no information about this one work. It is perhaps thought to be a copy of a lost original. Some think that it was even painted by his enemies as a cartoonish way to make him appear more evil. There's also a small painting of a man that is thought to be Vlad from the altar of a church, St. Maria in Vienna, painted in the year 1460. We do fortunately have one description of him from Nicolo Modrusa, a papal legate. Nicolo describes Vlad as stocky, strong, with a cold and terrible appearance. He had a strong aquiline nose, a thin face, and very large green eyes, which the portrait does capture. He also had a strong neck, black curly hair, and wide shoulders. So the portrait we do have of him does actually match this description fairly well. So let's take a look at my recreation of Vlad the Impaler as a modern-day man. We can also take him through a few variations, like a little smirk here, which is a little creepy if I'm being honest. And longer hair with a slightly different beard. We can also take a look at a possible younger version of him. So what do you guys think of the Vlad images presented here today and the history behind it? Prints and bookmarks of this work are available on my Etsy store. The link is in the description. Make sure to put your suggestions for new subjects and videos in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you for the next subject.